The grisly murder of Gambino crime family boss Frank Cali has stoked fears that the Mafia may be returning to the streets of New York City after more than 3 decades of peace. Cali, 53, was shot 6 times and run over by a pickup truck outside his red brick house in the upscale Hotel neighborhood of Staten Island just after 9:15 p.m. on Wednesday evening, sending shockwaves throughout the community. Authorities, including the FBI, are looking into whether the hit was authorized by one of New York's 5 Mafia families, or whether it was carried out by a cowboy gunman. One former NYPD detective who investigated the Mafia for years, Tommy Highland, told Inside Edition that this murder feels personal. Cali's murder is the first hit on a Mafia boss since John Gotti arranged the assassination of then Gambino head Paul Castellano in 1985. "We thought those days were over," Mayor Bill de Blasio said of the slaying. "Very surprising, but I guess old habits die hard." Aggressive federal prosecutions in the past 25 years decimated the ranks of New York's 5 Mafia families. The cases resulted in long prison terms for their bosses, Gotti included, and encouraged their successors to keep a lower profile. But the new generation still engages in old-school crimes, loan sharking, gambling, extortion, that can make enemies and spark violence. This week, prosecutors in Brooklyn announced a case against a longtime Gambino associate accused of killing a suspected loan shark affiliated with the Lucchese crime family. The Gambino crime family is one of what is widely referred to as the 5 families of Italian organized crime operations in New York City and other parts of the United States. The Gambinos' rise to become one of the most powerful Mafia families in America started in 1957, when the family's namesake, Carlos Gambino, an Italian immigrant, orchestrated the murder of Albert Anastasia, who had organized a collection of Italian gangs into what now would be considered a crime family. Gambino headed the organization until 1976, when he handed power over to his brother-in-law Paul Castellano. Like other Mafia families, the Gambinos took their methods from the crime families in Italy, La Cosa Nostra, and were involved in illegal activities like loan sharking, extortion, prostitution, gambling, and money laundering, as well as the frequent assaults and murders associated with those types of business ventures. In 1985, Gambino capo John Gotti orchestrated the murder of Castellano to become the most publicized boss of the family. Gotti's reign came to an end when his underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano, agreed to testify against him and other members of the family in a 1992 RICO trial. Since Gotti's downfall, the Gambinos, and other Mafia families, have lost much of the power they once had over politicians, judges, and labor unions. The family was headed by Domenico Cefalo until 2015, when Frank Cali took over as capo. Chief of Detectives Dermache said on Thursday there has been a slight uptick in alleged mob-related violence in New York within the last year. but he said it is too soon to say whether that had anything to do with Cali's slaying. Shay said the mob boss emerged from his home around 9:15 p.m. after the gunman backed his pickup into Cali's Cadillac SUV, damaging it. With what we know at this point in time, it's quite possible that was part of a plan, Shay said. Video showed the assailant pulling a 9mm handgun and opening fire on Cali about a minute after they started talking, according to Shay. At least 12 shots were fired. After getting shot several times, Cali tried to crawl under his SUV to hide, Shay said. Federal prosecutors referred to Cali in court filings in recent years as the quiet underboss of the Mafia's Gambino family, once one of the most powerful and feared crime organizations in the country. News accounts since 2015 said he had ascended to the top spot. Among law enforcement officials, Cali was known as a real quiet old-school boss, one police source told the New York Post. He was considered to be a foil of his former boss John Gotti because no one ever sees him. The organization reportedly focused its efforts on heroin and OxyContin trafficking under his leadership. Cali only had one criminal conviction, having spent 16 months for a 2008 federal extortion charge in connection with a failed bid to build a NASCAR racetrack in Staten Island. The hit on Cali comes just 6 months after John Gotti's brother Gene, 71, was released after spending 29 years in prison for dealing heroin. It was reported that mob bosses have been living in fear since his release, wondering whether the heir apparent would demand that he resume his role or even insist on a higher rank. A source told the New York Daily News on Thursday that cops were eyeing ties to Gene Gotti for Cali's murder, saying he may have orchestrated the hit to get back some of the clout in the family business. The source admitted the claims could be total speculation, but is something to look out for. Jerry Capeside, a mob expert who writes for the Gangland News, .com website, said Thursday that Cali is part of a Sicilian faction now in control of the Gambino family. Capeside said the killing doesn't have the feel of a Mafia-sanctioned hit. Frank Cali was a pretty likable guy, and also this is not a way the mob would kill one of their own, he said. There are exceptions, but that's not the case with his guy. Cali kept a much lower profile than Gotti and was killed in far less spectacular fashion than Castellano. He was shot on a tree-lined street in one of New York City's less glamorous outer boroughs, a short walk from ball fields, a country club and a day camp. Gotti, with his expensive double-breasted suits and overcoats and silvery swept-back hair, became known as the Dapper Don, his smiling face all over the tabloids. As prosecutors tried and failed to bring him down, he came to be called the Teflon Don. In 1992, Gotti was convicted in Castellano's murder and a multitude of other crimes. He was sentenced to life in prison and died of cancer in 2002. On Wednesday, hours before Cali was killed, the reputed boss and consigliere of the Bonanno crime family were acquitted in a Brooklyn racketeering and extortion case. In October, reputed Bonanno associate Sylvester Zottola was fatally shot while waiting for a cup of coffee at a McDonald's drive-thru in the Bronx. Last week, the longtime boss of the Colombo crime family, 85-year-old Carmine "the Snake" Persico, died at a North Carolina hospital near the federal prison where he had been serving what was effectively a life sentence. Persico was convicted in a 1986 case overseen by then-U.S. Attorney Rudy Giuliani.